set. It'll because we might be at this. Okay, so I want to do a walkthrough of how to format a source card for an anthology or a collection. So an anthology or a collection is like if you have a whole bunch of works all rolled up into one particular place. So maybe it's in a book or maybe it's online because, I could do it actually with this right here. So not at all, I can't do that. Let me see if I have. Okay, so for example, this is a book and it is a book of poetry. And in it, you have all of these different poems, okay? So in order to know how to cite it, I'm going to go to Purdue University Online Writing Lab, and I'm going to click. And I'm not going side by side, well I could here. So I want where's my MLA citation? Let me go back and our Purdue MLA Formatting and Style Guide. So here's my MLA Formatting and Style Guide, and if you'll note right here, this is a book, so I'm going to go to books. So I will click here, and anytime that I'm formatting a source card, I want to have Purdue OWL open. Now, the citation style has changed this past year, so there are a number of things that I'm used to having or used to requiring from students that no longer are required. So there's some things that are new for me. When scrolling down, I have a work in an anthology, reference, or collection. So each one of these are different sources. If I'm going to cite this Burn in the House by Kelly Davio, then I have to put her as the source, or I have to put Kelly Davio as the author, and then the poem is Burn This House. And then it is in this book, which is called Pank. So I have last name, then first name, and I'm going to write that on my card. So her last name is Davio, and her first name is Kelly. And I come up here, and I see that there's a period, so I put a period. And then I have my title of my essay, which in this case is a poem, and that is Burn This House, and it goes in quotation marks. So I write burn, thank you, this house. And because they tell me here a period, I'm putting a period and an end quotation mark. Then I have my title of my collection. So this is Pank. And I'm using my full line, Pank, which goes underlined. This is source number 1. Pank. And after my collection, I have a comma. So I'm going to put a comma. And then I have to use a hanging indent, which means that I'm not going to start my next line until about here, and that is where I put my editor. So, do I have an editor? My editor is Siegel. So this is edited by Ben Rafoth. It's first name, last name. I only use last name, first name for when I'm using my author. So I'm going to write down editor. Edited, by M. Bartley Siegel. And edited by last name. So then I do a comma. And after the editor's last name, I put the publisher, and the publisher of this is the Michigan Technological University. So, Michigan Technological University. And then my year of publication, and there's a comma here. My year of publication is 2008. And then a comma, and my page range of entry. And so my page range of entry, this is on page 40, and it's only one page, so I'm using P period 40 and then a period. And then I'm done with that particular source, okay? So if I'm doing this online, I still want Purdue OWL open. If I used another source from this book, if I use, let me see, let's say I wanted to do In This Dream, Jesus, maybe that's Jesus, her last name is probably Jesus, but maybe it's Jesus, who knows. At any rate, it would get another card, it would get a separate card, and the only thing that would be different would be the author's last name would be Quintanilla, Octavio, and then the title would be in quotation marks, In This Dream, Jesus. But Pank, edited by Michigan Technological University, 2008, that's all going to be the same. Then the next thing that would be different would be page 41 in that page. If I use 10 poems from this book, they all would get that same information, but the author's last name and the title and then the page number that it was on would be different for every single source. So if I'm doing this online, then I'm not certain. So I'm learning as we go on this. I'm going to choose an electronic source. So this was for, the Pank one was for a book because that was a book, but now I'm in an electronic source. So I will click here. Let me make this just a little bit wider for right now. And an online database is a collection. So I'm going to scroll down to an article from an online database. Let me see if there's a collection. No. So oops, did I pass it? I'm waving to my light so that it doesn't turn on. An article from an online database. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller and then scroll right here. So Edgar Allan Poe is a really common Gothic author, and through the Poetry Foundation we have the works of Edgar Allan Poe. Each Edgar Allan Poe poem would receive a different citation. So we have all of these poems by Edgar Allan Poe. Let's say that we are wanting to cite from Alone. So again, we have our author's last name, and so we've got Poe, comma, Edgar Allan, period. And then the title of the poem is Alone, and that goes in quotation marks, and I'm going to use a period, and then I'm going to close my quotation marks, and I'm going to close this door here just for a moment. So after that, I need my source that it comes from, which is going to go underlined. And the source is from poetryfoundation.org. So I'm going to write here, poetry. Will you zoom up to show where I got that? So this is from the Poetry Foundation. This is the source that this piece is in. So this is inside of this. So if I go to Poetry Foundation, I'm going to be able to find the poem Alone by Edgar Allan Poe. So I'm going to write Poetry Foundation, and it's going to go underlined. And I believe a period. Yep, there's a period that goes here. So I put the period here. After I put the source, which is underlined, though I don't have a volume or number or anything like that, but I need my publication date. And I'm going to see if there is a publication date. It says here, the source is the American Poetry, 19th century, 1993. That's not when this was initially published. He was long dead before 1993. So I don't have that. So I'm going to write ND for no date of publication. And I can show you here. Let me see. Including, I'll have to find that at another time where it shows that you should do that if you don't have a publication date. We don't have page numbers. The next thing that we need to do is write the date that we access the material. And today is 2 December 2016. That's today's date, and we use a European format just because they say so. So, and then after that date I access the material is the URL, and so my URL is going to be www.poetryfoundation.org /poems / oops, shucks. Does this work? Probably doesn't. I'm going to just cross it out. Hyphen and poets / poems / detail /46477, and I'm all done. So if I want to go to a different poem by Edgar Allan Poe, let's say I wanted to do Annabel Lee, I would do the same thing. So what would change is only this right here, and then the URL. This number changes to 44885. And that's going to be different. So there's only two things that will be different because they don't have the publishing dates for these on here. And this would be my source number 2. And let me go back to Alone. So if I look at this, this is really probably only one card. So, but if I had 2 different note cards from this poem, each note card would get a number 2 at the top because they come from this particular source. Notice how I have the hanging indent right here. And again, I can have 5 or 6 different authors by Edgar Allan Poe. The beginning of this is going to be the same. That will be different. And then the URL will be different. And that is how you access separate pieces from anthologies or collections or particular websites. Was that clear?
Just a question for the last notes card that you did. Do you have to start on the red line always?
I like for you to start on the right red line, but the most important thing is that you go over the whole line. So the only place you're not going over is the hanging indent. You're just starting in a little bit, and then you go over to the whole line until you run out of the line. So what students are making, the mistake that I'm seeing is that they're listing as almost like bullet points each individual thing. But if you notice, according to the commas and the periods that you have through Purdue OWL, this is almost written like a paragraph.
Okay.
Good?
Mhm.
All right, thank you.